to Busy Garden Life. I'm Sarah, and I'm
Megan.
here with my daughter Megan. And today we are going to make one of Megan's favorite things.
When I was a baby.
When you were a baby and you eat it all the time now. Applesauce. Megan loves applesauce. All my kids do, right? And I have been making it since she was a baby. And it is something that is super easy to do. Now, we have a whole bunch of apple trees that we planted a couple years ago that just have not produced enough apples yet. That's one of our projects for next year. If you've seen our 1-year review video, our goal is to get the apple orchard a little bit more, a little better, basically. We want them to start producing apples and peaches and pears and all the things. We haven't really paid attention to it very much, so we've kind of just let it go wild, and we haven't been able to produce anything. So that's our goal for this year.
Yeah, trees are very little still.
They're still little, but we haven't really given them much nutrients to grow. But with that being said, I always buy apples if I don't have them. Now, I don't always go and buy from the cider mills or even some of those apple orchards because they are expensive. So if you're doing some of this stuff on your own, what I do is I find the little country store or the little roadside stand selling apples. I even will buy deer apples. Deer apples, also known as seconds sometimes, are the apples that have just fallen off the tree. They might have a little rotten areas, some, and they don't tend to look as nice. I'm going to show you one of them right here. Let's see here. This one even has a little bit of hole in it, so you can see it's kind of a little rotten on the one and they're imperfect apples. But for applesauce, they still work great. Even apple butter, they still work great because you're boiling them down, you're pureeing them, and you can't tell the difference. I tend to keep the peels on them. I just cut all of the nasty stuff off, and I throw them all in the roaster at the same time and just boil them down till they're soft. So just food for thought. If you're buying bulk in order to do this, think about buying the seconds or the roadside stands. I also got a different bushel from another spot that was $15 for the full bushel. So that's a pretty good amount and these apples actually look really good. These ones aren't seconds. These are just the apples. Megan's got one of them here for you. These ones are really beautiful.
And big.
But relatively inexpensive. The deer apples were $8 and I probably got 2 bushels out of them. Where the $15 for 1 bushel, but they look really nice. So just beware buying at cider mill. They're great apples. If that's what you guys want to do is make a day of apple picking, go ahead. If you get them from your own orchard, even better. But I tend to try to find the country road stands that are cheaper. All right, so applesauce is super easy. I am going to show you how I used to do it. And then we are going to try something new. I got a freeze dryer a month or so ago. So of course I have to try freeze drying it as well to see how it preserves. So we're going to do the traditional method. So if you don't have a freeze dryer, then this is the way to do it. It works great. I don't can it. I do freeze it. I will also go through on how you could can it, but just know that I am not going to be canning it in this process. I find that freezing it, as long as you have the freezer space, is just so much easier. It takes out that whole step of the canning process. But if you tend to like canning and you don't have the freezer space, I'll just kind of briefly go through that aspect of it. So, all right, so to start, I have the apples in our sink.
And vinegar.
It's cold water and vinegar. So I like to clean all of my fruit that I'm preserving that way. It's super easy. I can just let them soak for like 10 minutes as I'm prepping everything else, getting it ready. And then when I'm ready, they're already washed. And all I have to do is kind of rinse them and start the process. So what I'm going to do is, do you want to rinse and hand them to me, or do you want to cut?
Cut.
You want to cut? All right. So we have our apple core slicer. So we are going to put our cores in here. because we are saving our cores to make apple cider vinegar. Stay tuned for that video. You will see how I make my homemade apple cider vinegar that I can use for all the canning going forward. So we're gonna put all the cores in here. I will kind of go through and I'll cut off any nasty parts and we'll give those to the chickens. And then the actual apple slices are gonna go into my roaster pan. This is a big one. You could also do like a crock pot, or you could do a saucepan or stock pot on your stove.
We used to do saucepan, right?
I used to do the stock pot on the stove. However, I found that it takes up my stove. So if I want to cook throughout the day, because you want to let everything kind of soften and just break down quite a bit so that you can just puree it super easy. So I have found that I can just get this going and then I just let it kind of cook all day. I'll stir it every once in a while. So no, this can be a couple day process. If you had an Instapot, you could easily use your Instapot to cook the apples quickly and get this done very quick. I don't have an Instapot. I just don't tend to use one, so the roasting pan for me is great. We're going to cut these up in the morning and kind of let them go all day, and then it is actually just super easy to put together by the end of the day or even the next morning, so it's really no time at all. The biggest time is cutting the apples. All right, so I'm going to wash them off. I'm going to hand them over to Megan to cut up. She's going to, you're going to put the apples slices in here and then the cores in there. If you wanted to, before you put the apple slices in your pan, you could do fruit preserves. With my applesauce and apple butter, I do not do that just because it becomes a nice sauce anyway. So any little discoloration that forms isn't much. We're going to add a couple cups of cold water at the bottom of this because we don't want the apples to stick once we start heating it up. So, all right, Maggie, you ready? I'm going to rinse. All right, so we are on our last 2 apples, and our roasting pan is pretty full to the top. So, $8 of apples, in which a third of them I probably didn't even take out. I'm feeding those to the chickens because they were really bad. And then we got this bowl here of scraps and not good stuff for the chickens. And then we got our cores. And we still got a full pot, so we'll get you another apple from over there, okay, buddy? So we have a nice...
No, not over here.
No, hold on. Not from... Okay, you can take that one. Go ahead. So it worked out pretty good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the roaster. We're going to turn it on kind of low. We don't want to scorch the apples. It does take a little bit longer when you use the roaster because you want to bring it to the simmer and just let it, go cook down. But I tend to like it because I can just put it in there and leave it and then go about my day. And we've got soccer in half an hour that we're leaving, so we can kind of be gone. And then just when we get back, we'll stir it and just stir it every little bit to make sure that it's all incorporating very nicely. So we're going to do 200 degrees. All right. 180 is a nice simmer, so we're just going to do it 200 to get it up to temperature, and then once it starts simmering, we're good to go. Yes, in the meantime, I wanted to show you, these are the containers, just those Ziploc containers or even Meyer brand, whatever brand you want, plastic containers that we use to freeze it. You could use jars. However, if you're going to use jars to freeze it, you have to make sure that they're straight jars. There's no shoulder to them. Otherwise, the jars will bust. All right? I tend to like the plastic. It's super easy. And then I don't have to worry about the jars actually breaking. And I like to use my jars for all the other canning stuff that I do. I don't want to waste them with freezer stuff. So we have all of our apples in here. I've done a ton. I'm hoping to do some of them how I want to, and then I'm gonna puree some of them, and we're gonna stick those in the freeze dryer so that we can have the powdered applesauce, and then we'll reconstitute to see how it goes. And then I also am gonna show you, or I'm gonna test out and see how it is with just freeze drying sliced apples. I've done the freeze dryer sliced apples. I'm planning on making some cinnamon sugar sliced apples anyway, so I thought if I just freeze dry some sliced apples and I pureed that into a nice powder and reconstituted, would it make a good applesauce? So stay tuned and watch all the way to the end, because we're gonna have a kid blind test to see if they think it all tastes the same, or if there's a difference between one method and the next, and try to determine what is the easiest and best way to freeze dry them and just make regular applesauce. So
can we tell the difference?
Can you tell the difference? We're gonna find out. So let's go ahead. We're gonna let this simmer for a while. We'll stir it throughout the day, and then when we're ready to kind of start pureeing it and get it all ready for the next step, I will be back. All right, so we've been letting these apples kind of soften up a little bit and break down. They are looking pretty good. Some of them are a little bit, still a little tough, but overall they're pretty soft. I'll come in here and take a look. So you'll notice they're pretty brown, which, because we didn't add the fruit preserver or lemon juice, you could add lemon juice or whatever. We didn't do any of that, so ours are pretty brown, but I don't mind because it is just applesauce.
It smells like applesauce.
It smells like applesauce. It's gonna taste like applesauce. So, whoop, dropped one on the side. All right, so our next step is to puree them. So I'm going to go ahead and throw them in the blender. Now, the old way that I used to do this is I used to use my KitchenAid mixer. You want water?
Yeah, I'll get some.
Thank you, Maggie. I used to use my KitchenAid mixer, and I had a fruit and veggie strainer, and I used to put the apples, once they were softened, through there. It would take all of the peels off, and I would just dump them right into those little containers that I showed you, and actually I would let them cool down. I would cool them down completely overnight, and then I would, the next day, put them through the strainer. I would get all of those peels, and I would probably run them through a couple times to make sure that I was getting as much pulp as I possibly could. This last year I got a Vitamix, and the Vitamix will pretty much pulverize anything. So I can actually keep the peels on these, and they will break down to the point where you can't even tell they're in there, which is really nice because I like it because it's got more fiber. It's got the fiber in the apple peels and just the nutrients in general, right? So to me, that's always a great thing when you're serving applesauce or vegetables or any fruits or vegetables, anything to your kids. So I'm just, yep, you can go ahead and you can do some.
Whoa, it
so
got
we're
so
just,
foggy.
It's foggy because these are still warm, and we're putting them into a cold container. Now there is quite a bit of juice in here, and we're gonna do a bonus of making some apple juice.
Oh, wait.
There's a lot of juice in here, which is apple juice. So we're gonna strain it. We're gonna strain it out and make some apple juice.
I don't think we've made it.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to just dump quite a bit in here. We're gonna puree a couple of them, and then I'm also gonna take the puree, which is going to be the applesauce, and put one on our freeze dryer tray so that we can freeze dry it. So after you puree it, that is when you will, if you are gonna add sugar for a sweetener or cinnamon, you could add it at that time. I don't tend to do that with the apples. I use a mixed variety of apples. I don't use real tart Granny Smith for applesauce. I don't use just the sweet, Red Delicious apples or anything like that. I tend to just buy a mixture of whatever. And when I do that variety, it seems to be sweet enough because as you're roasting it, you're getting some of that nice sweet apple taste coming out. And then I don't like to add cinnamon to it either because I'll do that if I need to afterwards. So if the kids want the cinnamon after I thaw it out, and I can sprinkle a little bit on top. Reason why is because I use a lot of the applesauce for baking, and so I don't want it to have added stuff to it if I'm using it as a substitute for vegetable oil and stuff. So I tend to just leave it as is. However, if you want to make a couple batches or all of yours with a little bit more sugar or cinnamon, you would do that after you puree it. So, all right, let's add a few more in here.
I get the cap.
All right, go ahead and put that cap on and let's see how.
How do I?
Yep.
It's weird. Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Heads up. It smells so good. Can you see that in there? Yum.
Yum.
I wish you could smell it. Nice hot applesauce right now. You want to smell, Matthew? It smells good, doesn't it? Okay, so from here, and now, granted, our apples are still pretty warm. I just now remembering to turn it off. So we have to let this cool before you just shove that into the freezer, right? But you could, ultimately, I could have just let these cool overnight and then put them in the blender and put them in the containers. But I'm just gonna blend them all up right now because I wanna get some into the freeze dryer because it's almost ready. So I'm going to kind of continue to blend, and Megan is going to start cutting up some of our apples for our, for our freeze dryer apples. So we're doing, you got some, perfect. Maggie has our containers here. So basically, I'm just gonna pour them in here. Really, this is it, guys. This is all there is to it. And this is actually a lot quicker than how I used to do it, which was easy. Now this is even easier. Blending it all up, it is ready to go. If you want it chunkier, just don't blend it as much, right? So let it just kind of break down a little bit. If you don't want the peels or any of the texture of the peels, peel your apples. That's all there is to it. So we don't want to cover it yet because we're going to let it cool. So we're just going to kind of let it cool. We'll put like a towel over it for a little bit. And then once it's cool enough, we will pop it into the freezer. All right, so I'm going to work on these apples while Maggie starts working on cutting up a tray of apples for the freeze dryer. Same thing, we're going to keep the peels on them. And if you wanted to avoid any of the turning brown, you could use fruit preserver after you slice them. We're just gonna throw them on the tray and get them into the freeze dryer and going. Matthew, no. To see how it turns out. All right, so we are on our way to our taste testing of our different applesauces to see what we find. Okay, so I have my tray here of pureed applesauce. I actually probably filled it a little bit too full, but that's all right, we'll see. And then we have a whole nother tray of our just freeze-dried apples. So we're going to freeze-dry this and turn it into a powder, and then we will reconstitute it to see what the applesauce is like. We're going to freeze-dry the apples just as they are, and then turn it into a powder. And thanks, Matthew. Turn that into a powder. Thank you. And then we'll reconstitute that and see how it is. And we'll compare it to our regular batch that we have right here. Oh boy. All right, so stay tuned because now we have all of our stuff done. I will say that the pureed is definitely, it's almost like baby food. Stop it, please. It's almost like baby food puree. Ooh, I got you. So there's not very many chunks of apples in there at all. So if you like a little bit chunkier applesauce, either use a food processor or, it's not funny. Either use a food, okay, that's enough. Terrible Jews, they say. Use a food processor, or you can either soften them up even more and crush them by hand. So, but this works for us, and it's great for baking this way as well. So let's get these down in the freeze dryer, let everything else cool, and we will be back to hopefully do our taste testing. All right, so I am back with our 2 trays of dehydrated apples / applesauce. I got applesauce in this one, the pureed apples, I should say, and then just the cut up apples. So I'm going to just put the cut up apples into the Vitamix, and we're gonna blend them into a powder. And we're gonna see what ends up tasting better. So I'm just gonna put them in a jar for right now, and then I'll take a little bit out tonight when the kids get home from school, and we'll reconstitute a little bit of the sliced apples, we'll reconstitute a little bit of the applesauce, and then I have the other applesauce that I made that we will just have them taste test all 3 and see which one they like better, or if they all pretty much are the same. And then we'll kind of compare the ease of making each of these and what is worth it. So these are completely dry. Let's go blend them up real quickly. All right, within a couple seconds, I got a nice powder. So I'm gonna put it in, let me see. I don't know how much I have. I'm just gonna put it into the pint jar. And then I'm gonna put the puree into the quart jar, just right now so that I know the difference between the two. So I'm gonna crush up the other one into the quart jar, and then I'll just put the rest of it into Mylar bags. So, you wanna make sure that your blender is completely dry. You do not want any moisture in there. Ooh, look at how much we have. Overflowing it there. All right, so I'm going to put the oxygen absorbers in here, and we're going to cover it for right now. Got my lid over here. And then I'll take just a little bit out for each child, reconstitute it, and then we'll taste test this one. And then this here, let me see, how am I gonna get this out? I thought I should have used parchment paper, and I was right. I should have put parchment paper down to make it come up easier, and I didn't. Let's see if we can get a spatula or something. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
What is that?
It's applesauce. It's pureed applesauce. Yeah, applesauce.
That was like a chocolate.
Hmm? All right, so I'm just gonna finish doing this. We're gonna get this ready, and then later this afternoon when the kids get home from school, we're gonna finish our taste testing and see what the end result is of our applesauce. All right, so we are back this evening, and I have our 3 different applesauces, and then I also have like these apple bites. They're like just little squares that I pureed the applesauce and put it in the freeze dryer and then just cut it into chunks to see if it was good just to eat. I've already tasted it. I think it's delicious. But I didn't like the camera over there. So I have our regular applesauce here. I have this applesauce in which we dehydrated the apples first, and then I threw them in the Vitamix and made it into a powder. So I reconstituted that. And then this last one is the applesauce I made. I pureed it and then I laid it out on the freeze dryer sheets. I freeze dried it and then just kind of crumbled it and put it into the jar. And then I reconstituted that. So we have 1, 2, and 3 here. And I am going to bring the kids in. I'm going to hide all of these, the jars. And we are going to kind of each taste a little bit to find out which one they like the best. All right, so I'm gonna explain. Here's a spoon for everybody, okay?
Me.
Yep, there's your spoon, and there's your spoon. We're all gonna taste number 1 first, okay? And you guys are gonna tell me which one you like the best between 1, 2, and 3. All right?
4.
Well, I do have an extra 4th surprise. So take a nice big scoop, a nice big taste. Matthew, like it? Hold on. What do we think? Interesting?
Bad.
Okay. What do we think about this one? Here's the second one.
That looks weird. Hopefully it tastes better.
Megan, get a big taste.
Well, it fell off.
Actually, this one actually tastes. Get a big taste.
No, that was a good one.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Okay.
You like that one? Hold
It
on.
doesn't taste like it. Last one looks spicy.
Spicy? Okay.
Oh, this
Let's try this last one.
does not look good. Looks spicy. Oh, spicy. Is it sour?
Ooh.
Wait. No. No.
Taste it.
No, get that up.
Taste it, Andrew. Yeah, I thought the same thing. So 1, 2, or 3?
2.
2?
2.
2? Do you need to try 2 again?
No, 2 tastes like literally nothing.
Matthew, which one did you like the best?
I think that's 1.
I like 2. All right. Now we're gonna try our little chunks, freeze-dried chunks. These are a nice little snack. Ooh. At least dip it in the one you like. What do you guys think about those?
Can I rate them?
Yeah? Okay, go ahead. Let's rate them. Let's see what everybody says.
I didn't even say anything.
Okay.
Number 1, I'm rating 5 out of 10. Number 2 is a 10 out of 10. Number 3 is negative 10 out of 10. Number 4 is like a 4 out of 10.
4? You liked that better than this?
So the first one has to be like about 8 out of 10. That first one.
That was
The
it.
second is a 10 out of 10. The red one is a 2 out of 10. Wait, no, not a 2. A 7 out of 10. And the freeze dried is a 4 out of 10.
Really? You guys don't like the freeze dried? I thought it was good.
That's a 0 out of 10. That's a 0 out of 10. That's a 0 out of 10. That's a 5 out of 10.
You liked the number 1?
Wow. What's actually the normal?
The normal stuff is number 2.
That does not taste like the normal stuff.
Surprisingly, the regular Okay.
I don't like any of it.
The regular applesauce beat out anything that was freeze-dried. We tried freeze-drying the applesauce and then crushing it up and reconstituting it, and then just dehydrating or freeze-drying the apples.
This literally tastes like literally nothing.
Freeze-drying the apples and then pureeing them and reconstituting. And then they didn't really care for even the little bites, which I thought were really good. I'm actually going to make some of that for myself for a nice little snack during the day to just have something sweet. It's really good. But it sounds like, for the most part, all right, so it looks like or sounds like most of them like number 2, which is the regular applesauce. So for me, I actually thought that the regular applesauce was the easiest. Breaking them down in the roaster, pureeing them, and just putting them into a jar to put in the freezer, I find it's easier. Now, again, I could can it, which takes a little bit more, so once I puree it, I would just have to bring it back up to a boil and then keep my jars warm and just finish with the whole canning process at that point in time. However, that's a whole extra step. So if you have the room in the freezer to freeze your applesauce, I would highly recommend it. You could probably even do it in Ziploc bags. Freeze them flat in Ziploc bags and then just thaw them out and pour them into another bowl. That would be super easy too, but I like the containers. So anyway, that is it for our applesauce, our contest, and the way we make it. So you do whatever works for you. Drop your comments to let me know what you guys like the best and if you have tried many different ways and what your kids have found to be the best applesauce. So stay tuned because this was video 1 of our apple preserving series. Today was applesauce. We're gonna do apple butter starting tomorrow, and then we're gonna do apple pie filling, and we're gonna just freeze dry some apples and make them into cinnamon sugar apples for freeze drying. And then I'm gonna have a bonus video at the end of our apple cider vinegar, because guess what? You have to save all of your cores and scraps to make the apple cider vinegar, and of course save all that juice for some apple juice. So we'll kind of combine the apple juice and apple cider vinegar into one because they kind of are just leftover stuff. But stay tuned for series number 2 next, and I will see you soon.